Hello, and in today's video we're going to look at the Lord of the Creation Adventures, which was going to be a 5 adventure mega campaign, but sadly we only actually got 3 products, or maybe not so sadly, because one of the problems with these adventures is, although I think there's a lot to admire in them, and they're, pretty well put together on the whole, there are some pretty big issues with it, whereby, is the tone quite right for the setup of the base box? Is it a bit railroady, and are there lots of sort of dead ends which the players can sort of run into, and you as a referee are just sort of like, oh well, hold on, this adventure doesn't tell me what to do, I'm going to just have to wing it. But I think as a story arc there is some interesting stuff here to do, but there will, I think, need to be some little retconning and a slightly better way to link the 3 adventures together, so someone you meet in the Horn of Roland maybe shows up in the Yeti Sanction and also in Omega Cron. Now, having said that, as I say, that I think there is a lot to love here, but they are problematic and they could really do with a revision from the 30-40 years of RPG industry knowledge that we've developed since these were actually put out. So what are they? Well, the Horn of Roland is the initial adventure that should have been in the base box, and I think it's a bit of a tragedy that it was removed. So what you get with this box is you don't get anything apart from the adventure. You get 48-page adventure with 5 special player aids, basically handouts, and it's an interesting sort of 5-part sort of mini campaign which sees you investigating a suicide/murder, and you've got to work out what it is and who was responsible, and you also then find yourself being embroiled in some sort of mysticism and having to go on the run from the Wild Hunt. And that sees you then going to the Bermuda Triangle and meeting a load of people and overthrowing a load of stuff, and ultimately makes you encounter the Lords of Creation, where you realise that you are now one of the Lords of Creation. So that will level you up and give you your first Lord of Creation power. So kind of an interesting introductory scenario, lots to admire in it, but as I say, there are some problems. The Yeti Sanction, in theory, picks up from the Horn of Roland, although it's rather tenuous, the link between the two. Now on this, you've got a slightly smaller book. You've only got 32 pages. You've got 3 handouts, and then a very useful Game Master screen, which is very weird that it's been sort of slotted into an adventure book. So that's a bit bizarre. Now this one starts off with a sort of CIA sort of spy thriller plot, and that then leads you to going overseas and trying to uncover what is Yeti, and it's all goes a little bit weird, and ends up with sort of a big super crisis where people just sort of appear and go, oh, I'm here to help you, and it's all a bit Deus Ex Machina. Your out is to jump through a portal, and that will then lead you into the 3rd adventure, which is the Omega Cron, which is a sort of parallel universe where the timeline has become broken. It's a post-apocalyptic setting, and this again assumes you've leveled up from the Yeti Sanction, so you're now got a power force of 25 or less, which I guess is like a level 2 or level 3 character. Again, 32-page adventure. You've got a bit more player handouts now, back up to 5. And weirdly, in the 3rd adventure, you've got a load of character record sheets. Now, is that because they think you're going to be killed off by this rather weird, almost randomly generated event? So yeah, there are problems with all 3 of these, but as I said, the core idea is pretty good. So let's just have a little bit more of a deep dive into the Horn of Roland. Now I will try and link the blog post in the description, because I think it does a really good job of a bit of character assassination really of these adventures. But you've got to look past some of its flaws, I think, to look at the core idea. So we've got a little introductory blurb for the players, but really they shouldn't be looking at this at all because there's a map on the inside page and then there's a breakdown of the adventure. So as I've said already, we start off with a murder mystery case. That leads us to discovering who the murderer is, and complications evolve from that with sort of cultists effectively, and that means we're now having to give chase as well to a mysterious figure. We get on a boat and sail off to the Bermuda Triangle, and that then gets us to an island where we've got to create a mutiny and free the slaves, and then obviously that then leads to us getting the Horn of Roland, which we need to keep ourselves safe from the wild hunt. Now, you've got a pretty good breakdown in this scenario A, which would actually work as a pretty good investigation scenario for, Gumshoe, Call of Cthulhu, and anything like that. And this is very much that sort of line of adventure, which of course isn't quite, as the blog post talks, the sales pitch of the box set where you've got sci-fi people jumping out into a medieval setting and shooting a dragon. Well, this is a bit weird, but I think the idea is that this is the real world where you are real people. You're not lords of creation, but you get sucked into the world that is where the Lord of Creation are. So in theory, you start off as like, if this was a Doctor Who game, you start off as one of the Doctor's colleagues, but then you become a Time Lord. That would be the way maybe to think of it. And there's some pretty good illustrations in here. There's a pretty good breakdown of all the characters that are important, and then of course a timeline. So as I say, you can see there was some pretty good effort put into this game, but it didn't quite work as per the blog post's criticisms. So you've got the Bermuda Triangle bit where obviously you're sailing away and trying to get to this island. You then get to the Bone Tower. Then we get to the Caves of Doom, where you've got an airplane crash and you go into some tunnels and get involved in all the shenanigans there, including robots, and a bit later on, I think the next section, we get to dinosaurs, but we get asked to help out with the slave revolt, and you've got these weird sort of three Kryn people who I believe are actually from the sort of the sci-fi setting of Lords of Creation, but here they're sort of all dressed up in weird sort of Napoleonic era uniforms. Anyway, once we free the sort of hero robot, we go into the Crystal Plains where there's some dinosaurs and uncover the sort of people who've been manipulating us in the background, and they're basically Prometheus and Erebus, and we wrap up the adventure. So as you can see, there's quite a lot of text. It is quite hard going because there's all these different people, there's all these different brilliant ideas, but I'm not sure how well they tie them together. And this seems to be a problem that flows throughout all of these adventures. There's all sorts of really cool ideas that you can go with this, and I can see what they're trying to do with the adventures, but I would suggest do not run these raw. So rules as written, do not run these adventures exactly as written. I think you will need to go in and do a little bit of tweaking. In addition, there are, I think, some errors in one of them, possibly the Horn of Roland, got an error on the map with like numbers duplicated or numbers missing. So there are some production problems, and this, I think, all feeds into my theory about where it went wrong for Avalon Hill. Is they produce these sort of fairly luxurious looking products. I mean, these are 30, 40 years old and they're still holding up pretty well. But that made them a little bit expensive. But also maybe they cut some corners somewhere to try and save costs. So, Horn of Roland was ditched from the box set and spun off as its own separate product. And it just leaves you a bit of a bad taste in your mouth when the ideas aren't fully formed as well. Avalon Hill were chasing the market to try and catch up before they became irrelevant, because obviously wargaming was shrinking. and role-playing was exploding, and then, you know, Tom Moldvay gets kicked out of TSR or leaves TSR, and he's got this brilliant idea for a game, and they just want to get it to market. So I would be really interested to see a Lord of Creation version 2, 2nd edition, and these adventures to be tweaked and made better. I think, you know, as I say, the germs of brilliance are here, but it just needed maybe a little bit longer, a little bit more polish, and I think that is quite sad. Now, do I regret picking these up? No, I think, as I say, 60% of it is absolutely brilliant. 80% of it is usable. It's that last 20% that needs to be sorted out, and I might sort of drop a lot of the detail and just go with the sort of the beats of, there's a mystery. That mystery leads you to an investigation where you uncover a cultist. The occultists drag you into a world of mysticism. The world of mysticism draws you the attention of some powers from beyond. That means you now have to go off and protect yourself from those powers from beyond, and that then introduces you to a new reality. You gain your powers, and that makes you get the attention of, let's say, the CIA. So that leads you into the Yeti sanction, and so on and so forth. So I would probably, as I say, take these and sort of rip the guts out of them to run them. But having said that, if I could actually run them pretty much as written, that would be a fun experiment, and it is something I'm looking at trying to do. So I will probably be throwing open the doors at some stage to getting this to the table for a sort of probably a virtual con. But before that, I've got a whole load of free league stuff to get my head wrapped around and take part in. But yeah, that's sort of the future, and I think, just from my initial reading of this is brilliant but flawed. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed that very brief look, and as I say, sadly, a little bit of character assassination on these adventures, but also hopefully you can see that, you know, I think there's a lot to rescue here, even if the actual product is slightly flawed. So that will do for now. So until the next video, happy gaming!